Today we are doing a Honda Pilot 2013 timing belt. No reason other than maintenance. It's time. 151,000 miles on it. So let's get working. I have to pick up the vehicle so that the front tire can get off the ground. I got to pull the front tire off so I can get to the front of the engine. There's usually a cover that covers this area here. It looks like somebody cut it off. And then they put some plastic rivets here because this is going to be in my way, so I'm probably going to just cut this off. Yeah, see, there's a removable clip here, but these are plastic rivets I'm going to have to cut off, but I'll replace that. Okay, we're going to take this upper cover off, which is two clips that you turn 90 degrees, and then lift off. And what I like to do when I put these back on for stuff like this, I'll put a little dielectric grease, something to lubricate it off so it doesn't get stick. It doesn't get as hard to remove for the next guy or me. Set that off to the side. And now we're going to take off the cover for the computer. Now, the book probably doesn't tell you that you need to remove the computer, but I have found that it is so much easier to work to open up this area. The only thing you'll be fighting after this is the air conditioning lines, but you'll be working under them most of the time. You got to remove the motor mount to get to the timing covers, and I find it way easier to get to all of that stuff with the computer out of the way. So that's what I'm going to be doing next, is taking this computer out. Magnetic trays are a needed component. You shouldn't do this without having trays to put your hardware. Now, what I'm going to do is something that you should not do. Do as they say, not as I do kind of thing. The first thing you should do is disconnect the negative terminal, the negative battery cable on the battery. That shuts everything down. However, on Hondas, the stereo has an anti-theft code. So if you disconnect the battery and reconnect it, the stereo is going to want a 4 to 6 digit code in order for it to work again. And that can become a hassle for my customer if they don't have the code, because I naturally don't have it. Some people write it in their owner's manual. Some people buy the cars used. They don't come with an owner's manual, so the code is missing. So when it comes to Hondas, I don't disconnect the battery unless I absolutely have to. This is an instance of do as I say, not as I do, because you want to disconnect the battery before you disconnect the computer. It's not good. But because of this radio issue on this Honda, I'm just going to disconnect the computer anyway. And now our computer is out. We do want to treat this with a little care. I do know that it's packed with resin, so vibration doesn't bother it, but we do want to treat it with some care, so we want to set it in a place that it's not going to be messed with. Okay, so we have what I call the bridge iron. It's just a support structure. You have this cross beam that sits on the fenders. Now these are a little bit weak. Normally the fender actually sits on the structure, but the Pilot is built up. So you have to be careful that you try to get as close to this part here, or the angle here, because that's going to be the strongest. Also, because of the way it is, some cars, or most cars that I've used this on, I can get away with just using this, but because of this empty space underneath here, I have to set up this brace which sits on the hood latch. And what this is doing is preventing the blue bar from rolling forward. So this is all one kit. I forget what I paid for it, like $100 or something like that. Now, if you notice here, my J-hook, it wasn't quite long enough. It would reach to about here, like so. So I found a steel cable, wrapped it up several times and hooked it up. And so this cable is as strong as this bar, so I don't have to worry about, even one strand is as strong. So tripling it up, I'm just making sure that the sharp edge doesn't cut the cable. That's the only reason why I tripled it. Also to take up the slack. This cable is about that long, so doing it several times takes up the slack. So now my engine can be supported. I'm going to continue working down here, taking the motor mount off. That's what's next. Is the bracket. And notice that way I don't have to worry about how the vibration dampener gets put back in. There's a little tab here that holds it in place when I go to tighten it up. Okay, next are large motor mount bolts. So there's one. See all the rust on that? That's another reason why I like to use the big gun to get these out. Yeah, that one's really rusted. Okay, and we got the third one. And now the motor mount comes out. Now's a good time to look at it too. These are just surface cracks. So but we want to make sure that it is still intact, and it is. You can see as I push down, they're not cracked all the way through. The same goes for this side here. And they use fairly rubber or soft rubber for these mounts, and all it is just holding the front of the motor up. You have a mount down here or back here and a mount back here. They control the rotation of the motor, so those mounts are going to be stronger. And they want it soft so that you don't feel the motor while you're driving. So now you can see I have lots of room that I get to mess with in here. So the next thing that's going to come off is the actual belt. Now we can take the belt off. In our pile of goodies. Okay, next comes the actual belt tensioner, which I got to get from downstairs or below the car. So we'll be right back. Now let me show you guys something. That's the reason why the bolt wouldn't come out. You see that plastic tab there? That's why you can't take the bolt out. You got to loosen it up to where it feels free, and then you got to leave it in there. So that's out. Now's a good time to spin it and listen. I think it's time to replace that one. That one's quiet. I may ask him if he wants the customer if he wants that replaced. All right. Okay, so next is the covers. Or actually, before the covers, the next comes off is the power steering pump. So we'll be right back.
All right, I have started.
All right, welcome back. So next one is the power steering pump. So you will be taking this off, but you don't have to do it yet. The next thing that comes off are the belt, the timing belt covers. Those will be hard to film. So what I'm going to do is just tell you that there's one down here, there's another one in the back that's up a little higher, and then there's these two on the front, and then there's one in the middle, and it's the same thing on this side. So we'll be back when the covers are off. Okay, so the covers are off here and here. The next cover, before we can take this off, you have to take this lower cover off. But in order to get that cover off, we got to take the crank pulley off. Now let me show you this tool. This is made by Lyle or Licely, but it is specifically for Honda crank pulley bolts. Because it's super thick, it puts more power to the bolt instead of the socket absorbing some of the power. And if you don't have an air impact gun, I honestly don't believe the Milwaukee half-inch impact gun, the fuel gun, I don't think it has enough torque to pull that bolt out. The V6s, they're not as tight, but I know the 4-cylinders are really, really, really tight. So they make this socket specifically for that one bolt, and I think it's about $45. All right, so let's go take that socket off, or that bolt off. Here we are. And the belt is loose, or exposed, all fully exposed. See how I'm putting that little bolt in? I'm leaving these two in their places. Okay. Now, what you want to do, we got to put the crank pulley bolt back in so that we can rotate the crank and line up our timing marks before we unloosen our tensioner. That's how we're going to take the belt off. Okay, so you got the crank pulley bolt back in, and you made sure that you removed that. And you can't see it from your angle, but there's a little dot right on the gear tooth, right facing the front. There's a little dot right here. Then we come up here, and you're going to be looking for about right here. There's a mark, like an arrow, and you want to line that dot, which is here, with that arrow. However, you never rotate the engine backwards. You always keep going in the rotation in the same rotation of power. Now, when we rotate it, we're going to be looking at marks here. So we're going to be looking at marks that line up with that slot, and then the same thing on this side. There's a slot right here, and we're going to line up a mark that goes up with that when I get done here. The most efficient way of doing it is line up the crank pulley first. You will either be lined up with the pulleys of the cams, you'll either be lined up perfectly or 180 degrees off. One of the two. And if you're 180 off, that means one more turn of the crank pulley. So here we got to run this thing all the way around. And you start to feel the compressions of the motor. Okay, I know that my dot is coming up. That's about right there. Get a closer look. Pretty even. So now I'm going to get a flashlight so I can look at the cam gear. Okay, you see there? Those two marks are lined up. There's a hash mark that's on the pulley or the gear, and in the back of the belt or the rear cover is a hash mark, and those two are lined up. So also it's hard to see on the other side because it's dark and there's a wire loom that's in the way, but I know that that other pulley is lined up as well. So now we can take the belt off. Unbolt the timing belt tensioner. So that's what we're doing next. Okay, so this is our timing belt tensioner. This is the timing belt tensioner pulley. The best way to take this out is just to unbolt the tensioner. Now this is a first for me that the I don't think it's the VTEC solenoid, but or sensor, but this is a pressure sensor that's right in front of the bolt. So this is where the offset wrench comes in handy. So we're going to loosen that one up. They're not that tight. We're going to have to do this one by hand all the way out. I suppose since the engine is off, you can take that sensor out. There shouldn't be any pressure in the oiling system with the engine off. But even if you do, there may be some oil that just runs out. There's only two bolts that hold this tensioner on. There we go. I'm not sure if I can take the bolt all the way out or not. Okay, I can't take the bolt out, but it's loose. So now I can go after the other one. And there you go. See how it dropped? That there comes off. Oh. Next, we can now take the belt off because they're slack, just like so. Okay. There's our belt. Okay, we're almost done with the removal part. Next thing we're going to take off is the water pump and timing belt tensioner pulley. So you got to make sure that this pump comes out, and it gets stuck on those because those pins are steel, and of course the water pump is aluminum and they corrode to each other. Okay, so now we're going to do the cascade. So we're just going to put this pry bar right here. Just hammer it, and there's the coolant. Just enough to let the coolant drain out. And I check my bucket to make sure I'm catching all of it, which I am, so we don't make a mess. And there's our water pump. And these are the pins that I was telling you about. Alright, So we are done. We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, it's time to start reassembling. And that one's lined up. So our installation of the belt itself is done, and now we can reassemble the car as is. So just so that I can save time and stop talking to a camera, we're going to turn the video off, and then we'll come back when I'm starting to reassemble it, or when I get done assembling stuff, because you don't need to see all that. There's no special trick. All the tricks, all the neat tools and whatnot were already on display. So from this point on, I'm going to put it together, and we'll start back up right before I crank the engine over. All right, see you in a little bit. Okay, so we're back. I just finished putting everything in. I have not put coolant in it, but I'm getting everything off the engine. Computer is in. All the brackets are put in. All the wiring harnesses are in their spots. Power steering bottle or the reservoir is in place. Wash bottle's in place. Pump, belt. Everything is all done. So all we got to do now is start it. Now I haven't put coolant in it just in case there's a problem. I don't want to waste it. But if the engine runs, it runs. Then I know for a fact that the timing belt is right. Okay? So without coolant in it, let's go try to start it up. Reach in here. Okay, contact. Okay, so the engine starts up, it runs, there's no check engine light, so that's good. And so now we get to put coolant in it. And we'll be happy. Okay. Okay, so we're back. The engine's all fully assembled, it's running. I've got coolant in it. All I'm waiting for is all the air that's in the engine and whatnot can burp out, and the cooling fans have to come on, and they have to turn off. I've actually seen technicians, as soon as the fan comes on, they button everything up, close the lid, but the fans came on because the car was starting to overheat and they didn't catch it. They go on a test drive and it overheats on them. Sorry about the wind. So anyway, I gotta wait for the fans to come on and come off, close the hood, take it for a test drive. I don't expect any problems, so I'm gonna call this done. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, show your friends, tell your buddies that Steve at Steve's Auto Care is kicking it at his home with his son, who's now his videographer. Thank you, and see you later.